Philippians 1, beginning at verse 12. Now, I want you all to hear this scripture, but I want you to hear it like it's live, not that it was recorded thousands of years ago. I want you to hear this scripture as I read it to you, because I want you to know something. I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel. I'm going to read it again because someone thought they didn't realize it was a live rendition. I said, I want you to know. I want you to know. I want all of you to know. My brothers and my sisters, that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel, so that it has become known throughout the whole city, the whole nation, the whole congregation, and all the rest, that my imprisonment, my pain, my suffering is for Christ. And most of the brothers, having become confident in the Lord by my imprisonment, are much more bold to speak the word now without fear. Some indeed preach Christ from envy and rivalry, but others from goodwill. The latter do it out of love, knowing that I am put here for the defense of the gospel. The former proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, but thinking to afflict me in my imprisonment. What then? Only that in every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is proclaimed, and in that I rejoice. Can we rejoice in the Lord this morning? Can we rejoice in the Lord this morning? Hallelujah. You may be seated in the presence of the Lord. Things are not as they appear. Things are not as they appear. I know we've heard that phrase before. I'm sure you've said it before. And in my study and preparing to minister this morning, out of pure curiosity, I wondered where that came from. And it's actually from an ancient philosopher in the likes of Plato, who was actually a student of Plato. And he said this, and I'm going to read the whole quote to you because I found it quite fascinating. And it simply says, he says, things are not always what they seem. The first appearance deceives many. Things are not always as they seem. The first appearance deceives many. Now, he was not a Christian philosopher by a long shot. But the reality is he spoke a truth that speaks to us as we navigate this Christian walk. We live in a society where we have to constantly remind ourselves that things are not as they appear. Social media has distorted reality in a way beyond comprehension. They have this thing now, they'll show you an attractive couple with beautiful children, and people will begin to follow them, and they will say life goals, marriage goals, family goals, relationship goals. You don't know what's going on in them people's house. You don't know what they're fighting with. You don't know what they're struggling with. You don't even know if they like each other. All you see is a picture. You see a snapshot. And then you say life goals, relationship goals. They could have just finished beating each other, the life out of each other. And we take something that we don't know, that we look at, This because it's attractive and it looks like something, and we begin to pattern our life after an image that is not the truth. Things are not always as they appear. And then the reverse is also true. If we were to see somebody pushing a stroller, standing on a bus stop, waiting with their kids in tow because they don't have transportation, we're not going to look at them and say, life goes. We ain't say, oh yeah, life goes, relationship goes, that's where I want to be. But because things are not always as they appear, the love between those two could be stronger between them than the ones that got posted all over social media. You never know what's going on in the heart and mind and soul of people, but we just look and we make judgment calls based on what we see. So if they are getting ready to take their next trip to the Caribbean, life goes. If they just had to take out a second mortgage on their house, yeah, nah, I don't want to be them. And so we have a situation here in Philippians where things are not as they appear. Because nobody wants to follow somebody who can't stay out of jail. Nobody in their right mind wants to pattern their walk or their ministry after somebody who's forever getting locked up. But as I said, things are not what they look like. Now understand that this letter to the church at Philippi, this letter to the Philippian church, has more to do with the church than it has to do with Paul. We've learned in the last 2 weeks under Pastor Perrin's instruction that this is one of Paul's letters. We've already learned that he's in prison, but that this letter has to do with the church more than it has to do with him. See, here's the thing. And see, this is the other thing that's gotten lost in our society is letter writing. How many of you all received a letter in the mail this week? Not a bill. A letter from a loved one. Just how you doing? What's going on? Anybody? Last week, last month, got one. We got one last month. In the last year, how many? We got about 3 hands. How many of you all received a text message this morning? Okay, y'all get my point? How many of you all have received the email in the last week? Text message? Okay? So we've lost the idea of letters. We've even lost the idea of proper grammar, but that's a whole nother sermon. Because I'm like, what? Because see, I still capitalize letters, so when people don't, I get confused. I do. It's the teacher. I go, what does that say? You know? But anyway, that's a whole nother point. So this is the thing. So he's written this letter to the church at Philippi. He's in prison in Rome. Rome and Philippi are about 800 miles apart. He's in prison. He's writing a letter to them. So here's the thing I want us to understand. They don't get it right away. They don't get it. He's in prison. Word has gotten to them that he's in prison. They've tried to get word to him, trying to figure out if he's okay. He's trying to get word back to them that he is okay. But understand, it's 800 miles away. And it's not even a Pony Express. So how do you get a letter from Rome to Philippi, 800 miles away? That's how they got it. They had to walk it. had to walk it. 800 miles. Now, Paul wasn't walking nowhere. Anybody want to know why? He's still locked up. I told y'all he's still locked up. So, and this was not just Paul. Anybody who they had to find someone who was going in that direction. You on your way to Rome? You on your way to Philippi? Hey, can you do me a favor? Can you take this letter and can you make sure it gets to the saints at the church at Philippi? Meanwhile, that whole time, he's written the letter, he's saving people, he's preaching the gospel, but the church at Philippi has no idea. They are struggling. They are hurting. They are confused. They're anxious. They're nervous. What has happened? Is he even still alive? As they wait on this life. And see, here's what's confusing them even more. Y'all know that story we love of Paul and Silas? Back in the book, recorded in the book of Acts. Guess where they were when that happened? In Philippi. So the Philippians, they already know that God is able. Y'all get what hear what I'm saying? See, that last time Paul was locked up with Silas and they got to singing and they got to praising God. Y'all know the story. That's a Sunday school story. I know y'all know that story. They got to praising God and they got to singing. They got to lift and the chains fell off. The chains fell off and they stayed put so that nobody would receive repercussions for them leaving or escaping. And so the people at Philippi, they know that story. It happened in their tale. In fact, that's how many of them came to Christ. So now they are confused. Why is it that the same God who got him out of jail when he was with us in Philippi, why can't that same God break his chains and get him out while he's in Rome? They are confused, not because of doubt. They just know that God is able. They've witnessed his power. They've witnessed his deliverance. They've witnessed the impossible. And they're trying to figure out, why hasn't he done it again? And meanwhile, they still on the first leg of that 800-mile journey. Trying to get that letter to the church at Philippi. And so here's what I have to help us understand, and I do mean us this morning. Because see, things are not as they appear. Yes, Paul was in prison. Yes, God could have, just as he did before, released his chains. But God said, I got a greater purpose that I need you to accomplish. And unfortunately for how it feels, it has to be accomplished with you behind bars. Because not only did he write the letter to Philippi, he had a whole bunch of letters written while he was in prison. And so the reality is, see, had you been out, had Paul been released, somebody get me here. Had Paul been released when we wanted him to be released, if Paul had been set free when we wanted him to be set free, if his chains had fallen off when we wanted them to fall off, had his healing come when we wanted it to come, the reality is we wouldn't have Philippians today. We wouldn't have Ephesians today. We wouldn't have Galatians today. Understand, God had a greater purpose. Things are not always as they appear. Somebody, it's not that God God was not able. Get this, it's not even that he wasn't willing. He just had a greater purpose. And you know what that purpose was? You. It was you. He knew that in 2024 that you are going to have to understand why you are going through what you are going through. He knew that you are going to have to make sense of your suffering and your pain and your setbacks and your frustrations and all the things you went through. He knew some 2,000 plus years later that there was going to be somebody crying themselves to sleep that needed to know, count it all joy, my brothers. So he kept him locked up, not because he couldn't, but there was a greater plan. I said there was a greater plan. Let's look back at this text. Looking back, look what he says. He says, I want you to know that that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel. Can you imagine how, even when they read that line, they were probably like, huh? And that's why he said, hold on, don't lose me, y'all, don't lose me. He said, listen to what I'm saying. Because I've been locked up, I got a captive audience. People who would have never come to hear me ain't got no choice but to listen. I can't go nowhere. They can't go nowhere. I got the best congregation around. I ain't got to beg nobody to come. I ain't even got to apologize if I preach too long. He said they ain't got no choice but to sit here and listen to me talk about the goodness of my God all day long. So while y'all think I'm locked up, God doing something new. I'm reaching people I would have never reached had I been free. That's what the text says. He said, no, y'all, I'm good. He goes on to say later on, he said the whole imperial army done got saved. Them Caesar's folk. He said, I'm doing well and I'm encouraged. And that's the first thing that he wanted them to understand. So when we are in places, saints of God, that are not where we want to be, period. See, this is what I love about Paul. He never lied and said he enjoyed being locked up. Right. He never said, man, being in this prison is the best. He never lied and said, I'm really loving it here. Not being able to move. It's great. He said, in spite of the fact that I'm here, God has opened a door that couldn't have been opened. Here's what I implore you, saints of God, for us to do. The first thing is that we've got to learn to fix our focus. We have to fix our focus. But here's the thing. When you begin to fix your focus, you need to know what to focus on. Because see, some of us, our focus is fixed. It's just fixed on the wrong thing. See, Paul's mission was to make Christ known. Period. It wasn't for him to be comfortable. His whole mission was to make Christ known. And as I studied this text, I looked at my own, if God were to ask me, is your primary purpose on this earth is to make me known, how would I have answered that question? Now, I do try to make him known, but is that primary focus? I'm not going to ask you that question because I ain't going to even answer it for y'all. Is my primary point of getting up every morning and going to work is so that I can make Christ known? Or is it just so I can live in this earth and take care of my family? And so he said the first thing, when you realize what the first thing is, when you begin to realize what's primary and not secondary, he said, I need you to focus on making me known. And then that means everything, hear me saints, that happens to you, you need to see it in light of making Christ known. First things first. First, you got to make it your primary focus to make him known. Let me tell you why that's hard. Because really, for most of us, our primary focus is just to survive. Our primary focus, I go to work, not because I always feel called, I got bills. I got bills. I got bills. That's why I go. But my primary focus has to be making him known. That means if that is my focus, everything that happens, I have to say, how can I, in this situation, make Christ known? So that if this week I'm short on groceries, instead of being angry and frustrated and doing the things we do and blaming everybody, God, how can I make you known in the midst of my lack? God, how can I make you known in the midst of what seems like an insufficient supply, even though you are the God that supplies all of my need? How can I make him known? And so that's what Paul was doing, and that's what he's trying to teach us to do. Not that you should be happy that you don't have the money that you know that you need, but if God has allowed it, God, how do I make you known in this situation? Y'all hear what I'm saying? Because it may be someone saying, well, you need to do this. You say, you know what? I don't have it right now. But I know that God is going to supply all my needs according to his riches and glory. That sometimes your struggles, understand this, saints of God, when you get your focus right. Because see, when we go through storms, Pastor, when we go through storms, Deacon, here's what we do. God, where are you? God, why have you allowed this to happen? God, I know that you're able, but you still haven't come through. God said, I need you to change your focus. Since you know that I'm able, since you know that I can, since you know that I want to, if I haven't, what am I trying to accomplish? That's all he's trying to get them to see. Not that prison was good. Not that your sickness is good. It's not pleasant. It's not comfortable. It's not convenient. But if it will make Christ known to people who wouldn't have known him in the first place. But you got to fix your focus. Because what do we focus on? The pain, the lack, the layoff. He said, fix your eyes on me. He said, then all of it's going to come together. That's why in this same book, do you know how he ends this book? Real quick. I didn't tell the media ministry I was going there. I'm going to Philippians 4 real quick. Because I want you to understand how he ends this. At the very end of his letter, he talks about something. That final chapter, Philippians 4 and 8, he says this. He said, finally, my brothers, finally, because he at the end of his letter, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is anything excellent, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about those things. So in other words, don't think about me being in chains. Don't think about me being in prison. Don't think about my life being in danger. Don't think about what I've been through. Don't think about what I'm going through. I want you to think about what is true. That is, Jesus is still the Christ. I want you to think about whatever is honorable, that I am preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. Whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely. He said, focus on that. Don't focus on my chains. Focus on what God is doing in spite of my chains. Don't focus on your lack. I didn't say don't act like, I didn't say deny it. Don't let it be your focus. Even if you got to close your eyes and remember the last time you didn't have enough. But somehow, somebody say somehow, somewhere, somebody came. That is God reminding you. That's making him known. Don't focus. So the first thing we got to do is we got to fix our focus. The next part of this, going back to the first chapter of Philippians that I love, because see what happens after we fix our focus. Fixed focus is contagious. Fixed focus is contagious. It was a student of mine, and I promise you I'm not making this up. New little boy at our school. I said, good morning. I don't have time for that today. Little boy. I said, you don't have time? I said, all I said was, good morning. I just don't have time for all of that today. And I met his mama. She ain't had time for it either. And I said, oh, okay, that's why you ain't got time for it today. And I was like, I want to say, you're so little. How are you mad at 8 o'clock in the morning? Because attitudes are contagious. I promise you I'm not making it. I was like, attitudes are contagious. When you are around contentious, negative, cussing, fussing, complaining, I don't like her, people, you become, whether you want to or not, a fussing, complaining, cussing, around it. It's contagious. It's contagious. If all you can do is find everything wrong, and then you will find other people who will jump on the bandwagon with you, and y'all just be a mass of complaining, miserable, I ain't got time to say good morning, bunch of folk. You gotta watch the company you keep. Focus is contagious. And if you hang around people that focus on what is wrong, you will focus on what is wrong. If you hang around people that complain about everything from the weather to traffic to daylight savings time because they can't figure out nothing else to complain about, you will be the same type of person. It's guaranteed. It's guaranteed. But look what happens with Paul. Remember he's in prison long enough to write several letters. And so he's encouraging the church at Philippi. And the first thing he says to them, when he says it has advanced the gospel, he said, but I want you to look at verse 14. He said, and most of the brothers, having become confident in the Lord by my imprisonment, are much more bold to speak the word without fear. Because I got locked up and I didn't stop proclaiming the goodness of God, some of them were afraid. They believed it, but they were afraid to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ because they were afraid that they would get locked up. But now that they say I'm locked up and I'm still preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, he said something has emboldened them. And now here they are preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ without fear. Why? Because they said, if I get locked up, I can preach with Paul. If I can get locked up, God kept Paul, God will keep me. But what if Paul, going back to our what if series, what if Paul had said, I should not be locked up? I'm out here doing a work for the Lord, talking about the risen Christ, and God can't keep me out of prison. I'm mad, I'm going to shut my mouth. What if he had decided that he was too good to be locked up? If he was too holy to be locked up? If he had been saved too long to go through what he's going through? Do you understand what I'm saying? What if he had decided that God was not right and God was not fair, and so he was going to close his lips? Not only are the people in the prison not saved, the people that are watching him miss their opportunity too. But because he had his focus fixed, the ones watching him got their focus fixed. And guess what was happening? The gospel was going out. It was being proclaimed over and over again. And then it doesn't stop there. Not only when your focus is fixed is it contagious. See, here's the thing. Whether you're locked up or you're free, everybody ain't for you. I'm going to say that again. Whether you're rich or broke, everybody ain't for you. If you preach the gospel, even if you don't, everybody ain't for you. See, and here's what happens. We get our focus fixed. We surround ourselves with people who have a fixed focus. But then here they come. And y'all know who they are. They show up everywhere. In every circumstance. In any situation. They. Who are they? They. Y'all know who they are. You know when everybody else, oh, you're getting engaged? It ain't gonna last. They. You know those people. Girl, I knew him way back. She done made a mistake. They. Oh, you got a promotion on your job? She ain't gonna keep it because they gonna drive her crazy. They. Those people, y'all know those people, don't you? You know them. I know them. They hang around all the time. They show up at every event, every family reunion. They even come to church sometime. They. And so there are those who are happy that Paul is in prison. Because they figure, I got his platform. I get to take over his church if he's locked up. Now, here's the thing I want us to focus on about focus. Remember I said fix your focus, hang around people that are focused? This is my last point. Don't lose your focus. Because that's what happens. We get our focus. They come around and we lose our focus. We make it about something that it's never been about. That's what the enemy does. He doesn't mind if you get focused. The challenge is staying focused. It's staying consistent. And so here they come. And so look what he says. He says, some indeed preach Christ from envy and rivalry, but others from goodwill. Others were doing it to compete with him. Others just because they believe the gospel message. He said, the latter do it out of love, knowing that I'm put here for the defense of the gospel. See, there were those knowing that Paul was locked up, said, let me take over where he would normally be to make sure that the message is still going forward. Others like, hey, Paul out the picture. This is my opportunity. I know stuff like that doesn't happen today, but they said, this is my opportunity for fame because Paul was well known, and this is my opportunity. I'm going to step into his shoes. But look at what Paul says. He said, I could care less. He said, I don't care if they preaching because they're sincere or they preaching to get back at me. He said, the only thing I care about is that the gospel is preached. That the gospel is preached. He said, this is the thing we have to understand. You still got to keep your focus. It may look like one thing. It may look like they're dragging your name through the mud or they're discrediting you. But things are not always as they appear. One thing I've learned is that when you live a life of integrity, when you live a life without compromise, when you live a life that reflects God, do you know that even when they talk, God will still make his truth known? That God will still stand up for you? And that's what Paul understood. And here's the thing I've been saying since I've been here, because Paul understood something that we all got to understand over and over again. It's never really been about us. Paul knew that him being in prison wasn't about him. He knew that him encouraging the brothers wasn't about him. He realized that others trying to compete with him wasn't about him. It was all about the gospel of Jesus Christ. He had to fix his focus and keep his focus and keep himself around focus-minded people so that he could do what God had called him to do. Things are not as they appear. Paul was in prison, and it was the best thing that ever happened to the body of Christ. People who would have never heard about Jesus, are now hearing about him. I want you to think about your situation for a minute, that thing that's making you mad. That thing that's like, God, I know you can do this. He said, you're right. I sure enough can. He said, but while you're here, make Christ known. While you're in that place, make Christ known. While you're battling your sickness, make Christ known. While you're dealing with financial strain, make Christ known. While you're on a job with an unreasonable supervisor, make Christ known. Do you understand? God said, I got you there for a reason. He said, but if you keep focusing on the fact that you're there and not on me who put you there, you're going to miss the opportunities you have to win others to the gospel of Jesus Christ. All that glitters ain't gold. And all imprisonment ain't bad. And as he said, this sickness, all of this is not unto death, but until the glory of God is revealed in the earth. Everybody standing on your feet. Things are not as they appear. They are not as they appear. But Pastor T, you don't understand what I'm dealing with. I don't. But even now, God has said, I want you to take your focus off that thing that's been wearing you down and put it on me. What can I do to make Christ known? on this crazy job needs to know that there's a God that loves them. I've been trying to move for years, and everything keeps falling. Who is it that's a block from me that needs to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ? I'm tired of going to dialysis, but there's somebody next to me in that chair that needs to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. Paul knew that God could. Even the Philippian church knew that he was able. But as we grow in faith, and we are in a place, God, while I'm in this place, I'm going to do two things. I'm never going to stop giving your name praise. I'm never going to stop telling about the goodness of the Lord. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make you known. In Jesus' name.